Years ago, the socioeconomic system was called feudalism, and then a lot of changes came in, and it was called feudalism to a degree, but it wasn't feudalism as it was before. And then this guy Adam Smith came out, and it developed a name, and it developed a succinct set of ideals, and it became capitalism, and it took a while to form into what it is today. And I think that there were parts where it was pure, and there were parts where it became impure, and we're at one of those impure times. And throughout this whole thing, it's always an evolution. And now we're seeing a new phase of evolution. We don't have a name for it yet, but I think we have a very good general idea of how it works. Now we just have to find a good way to mold it, and a good message that we can get behind and point to. And that's what everything else had in the past, and that's just what we're waiting for right now.
That brings up an interesting idea. So what's your perspective on how government runs in Europe? Some of those, France maybe, and Germany, some of those countries that have more regulation on their corporations. Do you think that's a good way? Is that something we should try to move towards, or do we want something different than that?
It's something to think on. It's something to look at. The one big thing about America is we are so unwilling to look at any idea that is not 100% pure American, and I'm sure you know that for a fact. You've seen it happen for the last however long you're alive. But it's a good starting point. There are issues with it as well. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think it's better. And that's just my opinion, but I've seen people there, and yes, they are in economic collapse right now. And certain countries like Greece, where it's a different kind of economy than Germany, are not doing so hot. And they're united behind one currency, which honestly, personally, I don't think was a good idea in the first place. Too many different economic systems. But the social structure works. Plain and simple, it works. You get a card, you have that card, you go to a hospital, you get there. I had a very interesting discussion with an Austrian couple sitting outside of Champs-Élysées, or sitting on Champs-Élysées on this curb, drinking a bottle of wine in the open, because that's legal in France. And I asked them, how long does it take you to see a doctor? If you call up a doctor and you say, I want to make an appointment, general practitioner, you got a cold, you got the flu. When do you get in there? The next day, the day after. And there's a lot of misinformation about that. You know, I haven't seen a doctor in 9 years because I haven't had health insurance. But when I did have health insurance, if I called up a doctor and I had the flu, odds are, if it was just a virus, I was better by the time I got to the doctor. At least a week. Maybe if you're serious, they can squeeze you in. But they say if you need to see a doctor right away, go to the hospital. You go to Germany, you need to see a doctor right away, you call a general practitioner.
I mean, that's one thing I think is interesting is some of the European systems are kind of a lot about what we're talking about. Higher regulation, more equal taxation in terms of rich people pay more because they can afford to pay more, less wealth consolidation towards the top. In the US, 1% of the population owns 40% of the wealth in America, right. And it's not like that in many European countries. So I like to look at that sometimes. I think that's a bit of maybe what we're trying to move towards, something like that, Even though it is European, I think it's great.
You know what? One of the biggest problems in this country, and I think one thing that we can all say that we're united behind, is this income disparity. And I forget exactly where we were. We were in the low 30s, high 40s. We were behind countries like Kenya. We were behind countries like Cuba. We were behind countries that we look at as the enemy, or we look at as being terribly poor, or just bad places. But we're apparently worse in one way. And if we're going around saying we're the greatest country in the world, we need the statistics to back that up. They're not there. We're low in education. We have the most incarcerated people of anybody in the developed world. We have the most executions of anybody in the developed world. You know what? This is patriotism retaken. We're not saying we're the best. That's jingoism. We're making ourselves the best, and that is true patriotism.
We are the 99%! We are the 99%!